Truistory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
Truistory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. The early days of marriage are often painted in gold, light, bright, full of hope. For Elara Quinn, they were exactly that. A golden haze of laughter, morning coffee with kisses, and lazy Sunday afternoons where time didn't matter. She was 25, freshly graduated with a degree in accounting, and had landed her first job at a small firm in downtown Savannah, Georgia. She hadn't expected to fall in love so quickly or so completely with Micah Alden, the confident, sharp-eyed project manager she'd met during a property tax audit meeting. Micah was 32, composed, ambitious, with a voice that always sounded like it was 5 seconds away from laughter. He was the kind of man who made you feel seen, even in a crowded room. When he looked at her, it wasn't just polite attention, it was presence. They married after a whirlwind year of dating. Micah's family was old Savannah money. His parents, Raymond and Vivian Alden, ran a successful development firm and owned multiple properties across Georgia. Their wedding was modest by Alden standards, but Elara's smile lit up the garden aisle more than any chandelier could have. Their new home, a cozy, 2-story colonial-style house gifted by Micah's parents, sat at the edge of a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. It was the kind of place where neighbors waved from their porches and robins built nests in the mailbox vines. Elara called it her little pocket of peace. At first, married life was everything she dreamed. Micah, ever the romantic, insisted on making breakfast every Sunday. He was surprisingly good at it, eggs over easy, fresh strawberries with cream, and black coffee just the way she liked. They danced in the kitchen to old jazz records, sometimes barefoot, sometimes still in their pajamas. He left sweet notes on the bathroom mirror before work. She left sticky note hearts inside his briefcase. They'd watch shows curled up on the couch, his hand resting on her belly, like it already knew their future. And then one morning, the test turned positive. Pregnant. Elara stared at the small pink plus sign as the morning light filtered through the blinds. Her heart raced, her palms clammy with a strange mix of fear and euphoria. She hadn't planned it. Neither had Micah, but something in her heart whispered, it's time. Micah came home early that evening. She hadn't even managed to say the words before he noticed her eyes were sparkling differently. You're glowing, he said, dropping his keys into the bowl by the door. Am I? She smiled, stepping into his arms.
he leaned in.
Did you buy another candle? You smell like lavender and secrets. She laughed. Well, one of those is true.
He paused.
Which one? She reached into her pocket, pulled out the test, and placed it gently into his hand. His eyes scanned it.
Once. Twice.
And then his expression cracked wide open, shock first, then wonder. And finally the kind of joy that makes grown men sit down before they fall over. You're serious? He whispered. She nodded. 6 weeks. Micah exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. I'm going to be a dad? You're going to be a dad, she said, resting her forehead against his. And I guess I'm really doing this. They didn't sleep much that night. They talked about names, about what room would be the nursery, about how Elara wanted to keep working until she couldn't anymore. Micah agreed, reluctantly but didn't press. He looked at her with so much tenderness it hurt. Whatever you want, Elle, he said. We'll do this your way. And for a while they did. The pregnancy made their love feel bigger, fuller, like they were no longer just two people in love, but a team creating a universe inside her. Every time Micah kissed her stomach, she felt like they were rewriting the stars. They started documenting the little milestones. First ultrasound, first flutter, first baby gift from her mom back in Tybee Island, a knitted yellow hat with bare ears. Vivian, Micah's mother, was polite, supportive, even, in her own perfectly coiffed way. She never said much, just nodded and offered tips that sounded more like commands. Elara chalked it up to Southern formality. After all, the woman did grow up in a house where lace curtains mattered more than feelings. Raymond, on the other hand, was unexpectedly warm. He always brought lemon bars when he visited and slipped her encouraging notes folded in his business cards. One had read, "You're doing great. Don't let anyone dim your shine, not even tradition." Elara kept that one in her nightstand drawer. As the weeks rolled into months, her body began to change. Her cravings were weird: ice cream with olives, peanut butter on pickles. She started humming to her belly, convinced the baby responded with soft nudges. Her face rounded out, and her ankles vanished, but Micah always said she'd never looked more beautiful. He still left notes. He still danced with her in the kitchen. He still made her laugh. But something, Elara couldn't quite name it, started to shift. Slowly, like sunlight fading behind clouds. It began with longer hours at work. Micah's job had always been demanding, but now he started missing dinner more often. Late meetings, he'd say, kissing her forehead instead of her lips. Then came the first time he forgot her prenatal checkup. He apologized profusely, brought home takeout from her favorite Thai place, and swore it wouldn't happen again. Elara forgave him. After all, love isn't about keeping score. But one evening, as she sat alone at the dinner table, fork pushing cold green beans around her plate, she caught herself whispering to the empty chair across from her, "Where are you, Micah?" The honeymoon hadn't ended, but it had quietly changed its tone, from golden laughter to waiting silence. She told herself it was just a phase. Everyone said the second trimester was the emotional dip. Maybe that was it. Maybe her hormones were turning quiet moments into loneliness. But she couldn't ignore the ache growing inside her, the one that had nothing to do with the baby. So she turned to journaling, to late-night walks, to listening to Norah Jones with her eyes closed and her hand on her belly. She told the baby stories, about how Mom met Dad, about the wedding dress she almost didn't pick, about how Daddy had cried when he saw the first sonogram. She told herself stories, too, that this was just a pause, that the golden days would return, that Micah would come home early again, that this, too, was part of the rhythm. After all, every love song has its silence. And Elara still believed in theirs. It was on a quiet Wednesday that Elara felt it most. She was folding laundry in the nursery. Well, what would become the nursery, when she noticed something strange. Not in the room, not in the air, but in herself. She sat down on the edge of the armchair, staring at the small onesies she'd just bought. Pale lavender, soft cotton, all size 0 to 3 months. They looked like they belonged to a doll, not a person, not a soul she was about to bring into the world. And in that moment, she realized something. She was scared, not of being a mom, not of diapers or midnight feedings or colic. She was scared of doing it alone. The thought hit her like a silent wave. What if the love she had imagined wasn't strong enough to carry them all the way through? What if all the sweetness, the notes, the music, the kitchen dances, was only the first chapter, and the next one was filled with echoes? That night, Micah came home late again, past 9 p.m. She was curled up on the sofa, a throw blanket wrapped around her shoulders, reruns playing on mute. "Sorry," he said, loosening his tie. The zoning meeting ran long. Total nightmare. She didn't speak at first, just nodded. Micah noticed. "Hey, something wrong?" Elara hesitated. She wanted to scream, "Yes, something's wrong. I don't know where you've gone even when you're standing right in front of me." But instead, she said, "Just tired. Baby's been kicking nonstop." He smiled, walked over, and placed his hand on her belly like he used to. Nothing. He waited. Still nothing.
Huh.
"Guess they're sleeping," he said softly. Or maybe they were picking up on her silence. Later, in bed, Elara lay on her side facing away from him. Micah fell asleep quickly, his back rising and falling with each breath, unaware of the quiet storm next to him. She stared at the ceiling fan turning in slow circles and whispered into the dark, "I hope you're still the man I married." The next morning, Micah surprised her with her favorite. cinnamon pancakes, and a tall glass of freshly squeezed orange juice. He kissed her temple like nothing had changed. And for a fleeting second, she allowed herself to believe it hadn't. Maybe that was love. Not perfect. Not always equal. But willing to hold on when the thread was thin and the wind was strong. She took a deep breath, smiled at him, and said, "This is perfect." "Thank you." He beamed. "You and the baby deserve the world." Elara didn't know what the future held. But in that moment, with pancake syrup on her fingers and the warm hum of morning sun on her skin, she chose to believe in them. Because love isn't just built in the golden days. It's tested in the soft, quiet, uncertain ones. And for now, even with the distance she couldn't name, she still believed. The honeymoon wasn't over. But something, deep and quiet, had begun to stir beneath it. Something unnamed. Something waiting. It started with a suggestion, soft, almost sweet. "Maybe," Micah had said one night as Elara rubbed lotion onto her growing belly, "you should think about taking some time off. You know, to rest." Elara looked up from the mirror. "I'm only 5 months in, babe. I'm fine." "I know," he smiled. "But you don't have to push yourself. We're okay, financially. You could use this time to breathe. Enjoy the pregnancy. You've been so tired lately." It sounded reasonable. Loving even. He wasn't wrong. Some days, she did feel tired. Not just physically, but mentally drained. Juggling client spreadsheets, back-to-back virtual meetings, and prenatal appointments wasn't exactly a walk in Forsyth Park. But quitting? That felt too final. "I appreciate that," she said, kissing his cheek. "But I like working. It makes me feel useful." "You are useful. More than you know." But sometimes, the most powerful thing a woman can do is just slow down. He smiled again. And that was how it began. A week later, Micah brought it up again, this time with company. They were having dinner at the Alden family home. The long, oak dining table glowed under a vintage chandelier, and silverware clinked delicately against porcelain. Vivian, his mother, served rosemary chicken and gave Elara her usual tight-lipped smile. "You're glowing tonight, dear. Pregnancy suits you." "Thank you, Mrs. Alden." "Oh, you can call me Vivian," she said, though her tone made it sound more like a challenge than an invitation. Halfway through dinner, Raymond asked Elara how work was going. Before she could answer, Micah stepped in. "We've been talking about her taking a break, actually." Elara blinked. "Oh." Vivian chimed in. "That's a wise choice. When I was pregnant with Micah, I stopped working at 6 months. Best decision I ever made." Elara forced a smile. "I haven't quite decided yet." "You should," Vivian said, cutting her meat precisely. "Children come once. Careers will always wait. It's not like you need the income." Raymond noticed Elara's discomfort and changed the subject to a new shopping complex downtown. But the seed was planted. At home, the conversation resurfaced. Micah leaned against the doorframe of the nursery, while Elara folded a pile of tiny baby socks. "She's not wrong, you know," he said gently. "I know," Elara replied, eyes still on the laundry. "I just hate seeing you worn out."
I'm pregnant, Micah.
"I'm supposed to be tired." He nodded. "Still, I think it's time. Let me take care of things for a while." There was that phrase again. Let me take care of things. It sounded like love. Like partnership. But beneath it, Elara felt something she couldn't explain. Like the slow closing of a door. "I'll think about it," she said, tucking the last sock into the drawer. By the end of that month, Elara gave her notice. She told herself it was temporary, just until after the baby arrived. She told herself it was for the best. That Micah was right. That this wasn't giving up, it was leaning into motherhood. Her coworkers threw a small virtual farewell. Her manager offered a reference for the future. One colleague even sent a care package with a note. "You're going to be an amazing mom, but you'll also always be a badass number cruncher." Elara cried a little when she read that. Micah came home that evening with flowers and a small cake. "To new beginnings," he said, lifting his glass. She smiled, toasted, and tried to quiet the small voice in her chest that whispered, "You just closed a door you may never open again." In the weeks that followed, Elara filled her days with baby prep. She created a color-coded Google Doc of baby needs. She deep-cleaned the house. She set up the nursery with little forest-themed art prints and hand-sewn crib sheets. Every now and then, she'd glance at her old laptop sitting idle on the desk and feel something tug at her. Some afternoons, she'd wander into town, grab a smoothie from her favorite corner cafe, browse the bookstore, or sit in the park watching joggers and dogs pass by. But even freedom could feel like a cage when you didn't choose it entirely. Micah noticed changes in her, but misread them. "You seem so relaxed lately," he said one night, massaging her feet. "I guess I'm adjusting. I told you this would be good for you." Maybe it was. Maybe not. She hadn't decided yet. Then came the day Micah surprised her with a new bank account, a shared family account, he said, where he'd move all funds and handle everything so she didn't have to worry. He meant well. But Elara's heart sank when she saw her name missing from the login page. She cleared her throat. "Can I still keep my personal savings?" Micah paused. "Of course, babe. But what for? We're married. We share everything now." She smiled and said nothing. But that night, she logged into her old account and moved half of it into a separate, untraceable savings account. Just in case. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she couldn't afford not to trust herself. Micah wasn't cruel. He wasn't controlling in any obvious way. He still brought her ginger tea when the nausea got bad. Still left kisses on her shoulder when she napped on the couch. But his love came with rules, unspoken, gentle, and slowly tightening. Like when he raised an eyebrow at her choice of maternity dress. "Maybe something looser next time. That one's a little clingy." Or when he laughed too hard when she mentioned going back to work 6 months after birth. "Sweetheart, you won't even want to buy then." Or when he casually remarked, "You're lucky. Most women would kill to stay home like this." Was she lucky? Elara wasn't sure anymore. She started writing again, this time not in a journal, but in Google Docs. She wrote everything she couldn't say aloud. Her confusion, her fears, her love for Micah, her resentment, her longing for independence, her guilt for even feeling it. She titled the file, "The Gentle Trap." Each night, after he fell asleep, she added a few paragraphs. And each time, she wondered how many women felt this way. How many had traded power for peace, voice for comfort, choice for stability. Micah loved her.
She didn't doubt that.
But love, if it came with fine print, was no longer love. It was control in a velvet box. One evening, as she stood on the back porch watching fireflies flicker under the Georgia dusk, her phone buzzed with a text from her mom. "May Quinn, how's my little warrior doing?" Elara smiled. She typed back, "Surviving. Not sure if I'm thriving yet." Her mom replied with a picture of the ocean back in Tybee Island and a message. "May, waves rise and fall. Just don't let go of the shore that is you." Elara blinked away tears. She would hold on to herself, no matter how soft the trap, no matter how sweet the voice that said it. That night, Micah held her belly and whispered to their unborn child, "Daddy's going to give you everything. A big house, good schools, the world." Elara listened and added a silent promise of her own. "And Mommy's going to give you something else. A mother who never disappears inside anyone else's idea of perfect. Because even gentle traps can be escaped. But only if you realize you're in one." The nursery was almost complete. A pale sage green washed the walls, soft and quiet like a whisper. Micah had installed floating bookshelves, and Elara had carefully arranged a growing collection of baby board books, plush toys, and tiny shoes no larger than her thumb. A mobile of little paper birds hung over the crib, spinning lazily in the air. Everything looked ready, but Elara didn't feel ready. She felt suspended, like her life was on pause while everyone around her kept pressing play. Micah had become even busier in the past few weeks. His firm had landed a new development deal just outside of Charleston, and the stress of managing remote contractors was starting to wear on him. He came home late, barely touched his dinner, and answered emails well into the night. Elara noticed the change. What she didn't expect was how quickly his warmth could cool without warning. It happened during what should have been a beautiful moment. They were at her 22-week appointment for a follow-up scan. The technician rubbed the cold gel across her belly and turned the monitor toward them. On the screen appeared the unmistakable shape of their baby, tiny spine, fluttering heart, miniature fists stretching open. And here's the moment of truth. The tech smiled. Want to know the gender? Elara looked at Micah. He nodded, smiling. You're having the girl. The tech's voice was bright, congratulatory. Micah's wasn't. Oh, he said. Just one syllable. Not happy, not angry. Just flat. The room cooled instantly. The technician kept talking, oblivious. Something about heart rate and fetal position. But Elara felt her stomach not under the pressure of silence. She glanced at Micah's face. His smile had become mechanical. His hand still resting on her shoulder, but it no longer felt warm. She knew that look. She'd seen it once when his college football team had lost in overtime. The same mix of disappointment and calculation. They walked back to the car in silence. And that silence didn't leave them. At dinner that night, Micah pushed his food around his plate. She'll be a daddy's girl, Elara offered, trying to bridge the gap. He nodded without looking up.
Yeah.
Maybe. You don't sound thrilled. He sighed, set his fork down. It's not that I'm not happy. I always imagined having a son first.
Someone to pass things down to.
Teach sports. Carry the name. Elara kept her voice calm. Girls can carry legacies too, Micah. I know. I'm just saying. He got up to take a call before she could say more. The next morning, Vivian dropped by unannounced with a box of maternity clothes and a stack of gender-specific baby gifts.
Pink.
Ruffles.
Bows. Headbands.
All of it. Oh, good. You haven't painted the nursery pink, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Green is neutral.
Nice.
Safe. Elara smiled politely. We wanted something calming. Vivian held up a frilly onesie that said, Daddy's little princess. She laughed. Micah always said he wanted a boy. Guess life had other plans. Elara froze for a second. He'll come around. Vivian raised an eyebrow. Let's hope it doesn't take too long. That night, Elara cried in the shower. Not the kind of loud, shaking sobs that make you feel purged. No, this was quieter. More dangerous. The kind that slipped down her cheeks and got washed away before they could leave evidence. She didn't know who she was crying for. Micah, for being disappointed? Herself, for feeling like she failed some invisible test? Or the baby girl growing inside her, whose first welcome into the world had been met with a sigh. In the following days, something shifted between them. It wasn't yelling. There were no fights. No cruel words. Just space. Elara would say good morning. Micah would nod, but not meet her eyes. He used to kiss her before he left for work. Now, he barely glanced her way. Even at dinner, when she made his favorite meals, he ate in silence, scrolling through his phone, answering emails, laughing at messages that never involved her. She felt like wallpaper. Present but not seen. She started counting how many times a day he touched her. Some days, the number was 0. When Elara brought it up, cautiously, one night in bed, Micah brushed it off. You're overthinking things, he said, staring at the ceiling. Am I? Babe, I'm just tired. Work's insane. I don't have the energy to dissect every look or missed hug. She pulled the blanket tighter.
I'm pregnant.
I'm carrying your child. I need to feel close to you. You need to stop reading into everything. That stung more than any argument would have. One Saturday, she went to the local farmer's market alone. Micah had promised he'd go with her, but backed out last minute, citing a video call with the team in Charleston. So she walked the booths by herself, sampling peach jam, picking out blueberries, letting the sun warm her shoulders. An older woman selling handmade baby blankets complimented her bump. Girls bring grace. the woman said. Boys bring trouble. I had 4 sons and 1 daughter. Guess which one still calls every Sunday? Elara laughed genuinely. The girl? You bet your sweet soul. That brief exchange gave her more comfort than anything Micah had said in weeks. Back at home, she left the bag of produce and fresh flowers on the kitchen counter. Micah came out of his office just long enough to say thanks before disappearing again. That night, Elara lit a candle in the nursery. She sat in the rocking chair and ran her hand along her belly. I see you, she whispered, even if no one else does right now. The baby kicked. Not hard, just enough to answer. A few nights later, she overheard Micah on the phone in his office.
No, man.
Not a boy. Yeah. Sucks, right? I know. Everyone at work thought I'd get the legacy going. Guess the universe had other plans. Elara stood outside the door. Frozen. Legacy. Like she'd been tasked with continuing his family line and failed at the first hurdle. She didn't say anything. She just went upstairs, crawled into bed, and stared at the ceiling until sleep took pity on her. The next morning, she called her mother. May picked up after the first ring. Hey, sweetheart. Hi, Mom. Her voice cracked. What happened? Nothing happened, Elara. Okay, something's happening. I think Micah is disappointed because we're having a girl. May sighed. Tell me what he said. Elara recounted it all, the cold reaction, the silence, the comment on the phone. There was a pause. Then May said, firmly, You are not a disappointment. And that baby girl will be the brightest damn star he's ever seen. He just hasn't figured that out yet. I feel so invisible, Elara whispered. Then remind yourself that you're not. And don't you dare let silence shrink you. That night, Elara set a boundary. Not with confrontation, but with presence. She dressed in a soft midnight blue maternity dress, not for Micah, but for herself. She set the table, lit 2 candles, and made lemon herb chicken with roasted sweet potatoes. Micah came home late. He paused at the doorway, surprised. What's all this? Dinner, she said. I thought we could eat like we used to. He hesitated. It smells amazing. They sat down. For a moment, it felt like before. But when she reached for his hand across the table, he didn't take it, and the silence between the walls grew even louder. The first time Elara noticed it, it seemed innocent enough. She was doing laundry on a Thursday morning, folding Micah's work shirts fresh from the dryer. Her hands moved automatically, sleeve to sleeve, button to collar, until she paused at a familiar white Oxford. There, just beneath the collarbone, was a faint pink smudge. Lipstick. Her breath caught in her chest. She rubbed it with her thumb. It didn't come off. She stared at it for a moment longer, then neatly folded the shirt and placed it at the bottom of the pile, like burying a secret. That night, she didn't mention it. Micah came home late, again. He smelled like woodsy cologne and restaurant air, garlic, whiskey, faint cigar smoke. He dropped his keys in the bowl, kissed her forehead out of habit, and murmured something about a client dinner that ran long. Elara smiled, set a plate of leftover pasta on the table, and said nothing. But all night, her eyes kept flicking to the shirt he was wearing. The blue one, not the white. She wondered where that white shirt was now, and who had been close enough to leave a mark on it. She told herself it was paranoia, that she was hormonal, sensitive. Pregnancy made everything feel bigger. Hunger, emotion, fear. But the next week it happened again. Another shirt, another smudge. This one coral pink. Different from the last. Different shade. Same placement. Same eerie silence. This time, she didn't bury it. She left it draped over the laundry basket, collar up, stain exposed.
Acquietare.
Micah walked past it 3 times that evening. He didn't say a word. Elara began to observe him like a stranger. She watched how he answered phone calls now, in the hallway, with the door half closed. How he smiled at his screen more often than he smiled at her. How he took longer showers and carried his phone into the bathroom. How he stayed out later, sometimes past midnight. and how he always came home with a story too neat to question, and a tone that dared her to. "You don't trust me?" he asked once when she gently pressed for details. "I just want to know where you've been," she said. "I've been working. Providing. You think that's easy."
No.
"But I think being present matters too." Micah scoffed. "You're lucky. You get to stay home, nap when you want, read your little books, bake cookies. I bust my ass so we can live comfortably." Elara folded her arms. "You call this comfortable?"
He didn't respond.
He just grabbed a beer from the fridge and went upstairs. One morning, after Micah left for work, Elara checked the passenger seat of his car while taking out the trash. There, on the floor mat, was a receipt from the Driftwood Inn, a boutique hotel across town. Room 308. 9:32 p.m. 2 guests. Wine service. Her fingers trembled as she folded the receipt and placed it in her pocket. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just walked back into the house, sat on the couch, and stared at the fireplace for over an hour. The house felt unfamiliar now. A museum of moments that were no longer safe. Elara didn't confront him that night. She needed proof. Not for him, but for herself. To confirm that the sinking feeling in her chest wasn't just fear. It was reality knocking. So she called her father. Jack Quinn, a retired Navy man with a quiet sense of justice and a low tolerance for bullshit. He didn't need details, just said, "I'll make a call." Within 24 hours, he had a friend from his old unit run a quiet check on Micah's name, car, and known associates. 2 days later, Elara got the message. "He's been to the Driftwood Inn 3 times in the past month. Same check-in. Same woman. Her name's Lila Monroe. Works in marketing. Same company." Elara's stomach twisted. Lila. She remembered her. Slim. Red hair. Bright smile. Overly friendly at the last company holiday party. Elara had thought she was just enthusiastic. Apparently, she was more than that. That night, Elara waited. Micah came home just past 10, loose tie, flushed face, smelling faintly of vanilla and something too sweet to be hers. She met him at the door. "Hey," she said calmly. "Hey," he replied, stepping past her. "I found the receipt." Micah paused mid-step.
What?
"The Driftwood Inn. Room 308. 3 visits. Lila Monroe." His shoulders stiffened. "Elara. Don't lie." He turned around slowly. "It's not what you think. You think I don't recognize lipstick? You think I don't notice you smiling at your phone more than your wife? I've just been stressed. She's easy to talk to. And apparently easy to undress, too." His face hardened. "That's not fair." Elara's voice didn't rise. "You're right. Fair would have been telling me before I had to find out this way." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "It was a mistake. I didn't plan it. It just happened. And then it happened again. And again." He didn't answer. "You cheated on me," she whispered, "while I was carrying your child." Micah looked at her like he wanted to say something. Then he looked away. That was worse. Elara didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, watching the ceiling swirl in slow, dizzy loops. Her hands on her belly, her daughter kicking softly inside her, unaware of the storm above. She wanted to scream, to throw things, to leave. But she was 8 months pregnant. She had no income.
No fallback.
And she was tired. So tired. The next morning, she called her mother. May didn't speak at first, just listened. Then she said, "I'm coming to you. Today." Elara nodded, even though her mother couldn't see her. Vivian showed up before noon. She walked into the kitchen, saw Elara in her robe, and said, "Micah told me you had a disagreement." Elara laughed bitterly. "Is that what we're calling it?" Vivian sighed. "I understand you're upset. But all marriages go through rough patches." He cheated, Vivian. The air went still. Vivian's jaw tightened. "Even so, you're about to have a baby. This isn't the time to make rash decisions." Elara turned to her. "So, I'm supposed to just smile through betrayal? You're supposed to protect your family?" Elara shook her head. Protecting my daughter includes protecting her from a man who chooses pleasure over loyalty. Vivian looked like she wanted to respond, but didn't. She simply placed a container of soup on the counter and left without another word. That night, Elara sat on the nursery floor, surrounded by folded clothes and unopened diapers. The mobile above her swayed, casting small bird-shaped shadows across the wall. She whispered to her unborn daughter, "I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I promise you this. I'll never let silence be the language of our home." Over the next few days, Micah tried. He made breakfast, offered to rub her feet, bought a teddy bear bigger than the crib. But Elara was ice. Not cruel, not loud, just done. She stopped cooking for him, stopped asking how his day was, stopped pretending. Micah noticed, but he didn't beg. He simply waited, perhaps hoping she'd forget. But women don't forget pain, they absorb it. They build homes around it, cribs around it, lives around it. One night, Micah reached for her belly and said, "She's going to need both of us." Elara looked at him and replied, "Then you should have thought of that before she became a witness to your betrayal." He didn't try again. The day May arrived, Elara cried for the first time in a week. Not because of Micah, but because her mother held her like she hadn't been held in years. Because her mother didn't ask questions. She just brought warm blankets, ginger tea, and old love. And sometimes, old love is the only kind that knows how to mend something broken. It started with a cramp.
Sharp. Sudden.
Low in her belly. Elara sat up in bed, clutching the sheet as the pain curled around her like a vice. She blinked at the clock. 11:40, 1 p.m. Rain tapped against the bedroom windows in steady rhythm. Another cramp. Stronger this time. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed, planting her feet on the cold hardwood floor. Her breath came in shallow waves. She rubbed her belly instinctively, whispering, "Not yet. Just wait." But the warmth that spread between her legs told her otherwise. Her water had broken. Elara called out, but the house was still. Micah wasn't home. He'd texted earlier that he was staying late at the office. Again. She hadn't even replied. What was there left to say? She reached for her phone, trying to calm the pounding in her chest. She dialed once. Voicemail. She dialed again. Still no answer. On the third try, it rang twice before being declined. And that's when she knew. He wasn't at the office. Lightning cracked across the sky. Elara grabbed her hospital bag. Thank God she'd packed it early, and threw on a coat over her nightdress. She waddled down the stairs, gripping the railing like a lifeline. Every contraction felt like a betrayal. Her husband should be here. Her daughter's father should be holding her hand. Instead, Elara drove herself through the rain. The roads were slick, headlights blurry through the windshield. She focused on breathing, on staying calm. She timed the contractions in her head. 6 minutes apart, then 5, then 4. She hit a red light and screamed into the empty car, pounding the steering wheel as another wave of pain stole her breath. You don't get to miss this. But Micah already had. She arrived at Savannah General Hospital just past midnight. A nurse rushed to her side, helping her out of the car. You came alone? The nurse asked gently. Elara nodded, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. He's not here. Don't worry, Han, you're not alone anymore. We've got you. The delivery was long, exhausting, unforgiving. Elara labored for 6 hours, gripping the rails, breathing through agony. May, her mother, arrived halfway through, hair damp from the storm, eyes full of fear and love. I've got you, baby girl, she whispered, never leaving her side. At 6:17 a.m., with the first pink light of morning breaking through the clouds, Ori Quinn Alden was born. 6 pounds, 11 ounces. Perfect in every way. Elara held her daughter to her chest, skin to skin, tears falling freely now. Not from pain, but from overwhelming, crushing, beautiful relief. She whispered to the tiny, wailing girl, "You came into this world stronger than anyone expected." And Elara had never felt more alive. Micah didn't show up until 2 hours later. He looked tired, unshaven, guilt carved into the lines of his face. His eyes were red, not from crying, Elara suspected, but from whatever indulgences had kept him away. He stepped into the recovery room, saw Elara in the hospital bed holding Ori, and froze. "She's beautiful," he said. "She's strong," Elara corrected, not looking at him. He approached slowly, like a man entering a crime scene. "Can I hold her?" Elara looked down at the tiny face resting on her chest. Then, reluctantly, she nodded. Micah took his daughter in trembling arms. For a second, the world stood still. Ori blinked, yawned, and settled into his chest like she knew him anyway. But Elara saw the cracks in his performance, the stiffness in his grip, the tremor in his smile. He was a stranger with her, because he'd been a stranger to her. May returned with coffee and glared at Micah. He tried to offer a polite smile. She didn't return it. "Can I talk to Elara alone?" he asked. May looked at her daughter, waiting. Elara nodded once. Her mother left without a word. Micah sat down at the edge of the bed. The silence between them was louder than Ori's soft breathing. "I'm sorry," he said. "For missing the birth?" Elara asked, voice flat. "For all of it." She stared at him. "Were you with her?" He didn't answer. "You don't have to lie. I already know." Micah's shoulders sagged. "Yes." A single word. A confession too late. "I was scared," he continued, "of becoming father. Of not being enough. Of losing myself. And you think I wasn't scared?" She snapped, voice finally cracking. "You think I didn't feel alone every day for the past 3 months? You think carrying this child, with your absence louder than any scream, wasn't terrifying?" "I never meant to." "You chose her, Micah. Again and again. When you ignored my calls. When you erased lipstick stains and bought excuses. When I needed you, you chose her." Micah was silent. "I went into labor alone," Elara said. "I drove myself to the hospital. I breathed through every contraction without you. And now you want to waltz in here and what? Redeem yourself with a lullaby?" He looked like he wanted to disappear. "You don't get to rewrite this story," she said softly. "Not anymore." He stood. "Do you want me to leave?" Elara looked at her daughter, then at him. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But I need time. And I need space." Micah nodded. "Okay." He gently laid Ori back into her arms. Their daughter stirred, yawned again, then settled. Elara didn't watch him walk out. She only held her child tighter. Over the next 2 days, May never left her side. They talked, laughed a little, cried more. May helped Elara learn to swaddle, to breastfeed, to burp her baby girl in the soft hours of the night. She whispered wisdom passed down through generations. "Babies feel everything, Elara. Love, anger, hope. Be careful what you carry around her." Elara nodded. So she worked to carry grace. Even when it hurt. Micah visited once more before they were discharged. He brought flowers and a stuffed rabbit with floppy ears. He held Ori again, this time a little more confidently. But Elara remained distant. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't cold. She was rebuilding her walls. One quiet look at a time. Back home, the nursery greeted them like a long-forgotten promise. May stayed for another week, helping Elara adjust to the late nights. The long feedings, the emotional crashes that came like waves. Micah texted,
Called.
asked to visit. Sometimes Elara responded. Sometimes she didn't. She needed to find herself again first. Not as a wife. Not even just as a mother. But as Elara. One morning, while rocking Ori to sleep, Elara whispered, "You saved me." Because she had. Ori's presence had been an anchor in the storm. A reminder that strength wasn't found in anger or revenge, but in love that demanded better. In love that began with the self. The first time Micah showed up to visit and offered to change a diaper, Elara didn't stop him. When he stayed through an entire feeding and didn't check his phone, she noticed. When he asked how she was doing, not just as a mother, but as a woman, she nearly cried. But she didn't fall for words. Not this time. She needed consistency, not apologies. One night, Micah sat on the porch steps with his hands clasped, looking out into the dark. "I miss you," he said quietly. Elara stood beside him, arms crossed. "I miss who I thought you were," she replied. He looked up. "Can I be that man again?" Elara studied his face, the weariness, the lines of regret, the sincerity she hadn't seen in months. "Maybe," she said. "But not for me." Micah blinked. "Then for who?" "For her," Elara whispered, glancing back through the window at Ori. "You're not working to win me back, Micah. You're working to be the kind of father she deserves." He nodded slowly. "I can live with that." Elara turned and walked back inside. But this time, she didn't close the door behind her. The days that followed Ori's birth felt like fragments. Elara moved through them like someone walking underwater, aware of her limbs, of time, of sound, but somehow separate from all of it. Her body was sore, healing. Her mind even more so. There were moments of beauty. Ori's first hiccup, her tiny fingers curling around Elara's thumb, her breath soft against her neck at 3 a.m. But even those moments were laced with grief. Grief for the marriage she thought she had. Grief for the man she used to trust. Grief for the version of herself that believed love was enough to last forever. Micah visited every other day. He brought groceries, diapers,
Formula.
baby books. He stayed longer each time, changing diapers with clumsy gentleness, holding Ori while she napped, reading aloud from picture books in a voice that trembled with effort. He didn't push.
He didn't plead.
And maybe that was what hurt more. He was trying. Too late. Too distant. But trying. One night, after May had gone home, and the baby was finally asleep, Elara sat on the couch with a cup of lukewarm tea. Micah sat on the opposite end, silent, watching the muted television screen. "Why her?" Elara asked quietly. Micah turned, startled.
What?
"Why Lila? What did she give you that I didn't?" He hesitated. It wasn't about her. Elara laughed, bitter. "Of course it was."
No. It was about me.
He rubbed the back of his neck. "I felt invisible, like I was drowning in expectations, work, family, fatherhood. And she didn't expect anything. She just listened." "I listened," Elara snapped. "I know. I bet myself in half to make you feel safe. I left my job. I softened my edges. I turned down my own voice so you could feel loud." Micah swallowed. "I didn't ask for that."
No.
"But you didn't stop it, either." There was a long silence between them. Then Micah said, "I thought the baby would fix everything." Elara turned to him, eyes sharp. "She's not a glue stick, Micah. She's a person. She's not here to patch the holes in our love story." He looked down, ashamed. "I know. I can't pretend anymore," she said. "I won't." The next day, Elara made a decision. She opened her laptop, logged into a freelancing site she used years ago, and posted her profile again. She updated her resume. She listed her services: bookkeeping, payroll, tax prep. She sent 3 pitches to small businesses looking for part-time help.
It was a small act.
But it felt like reclaiming air after drowning. When Micah came by that evening, he noticed the shift in her. "You look different," he said. "I feel different," she replied. He followed her into the kitchen. "What happened?" "I remembered who I was." They stood in silence for a moment. Micah reached out, gently touching her arm. "Is there still a future for us?" Elara met his eyes. "There might be." He exhaled, hopeful. "But only if you understand one thing." "Anything." "I'm not staying out of fear. Or pity. Or for Ori. If I stay, it's because you become someone worth staying for." Micah nodded, slowly. "I can be that." "Then show me." Over the next few weeks, the rhythm between them began to shift. Micah started attending therapy alone. He didn't ask Elara to go with him. He didn't expect her forgiveness. He simply went. He stopped bringing flowers. Stopped offering hollow apologies. Instead, he started showing up consistently. He arrived at 6 p.m. every other day. bathed Ori, rocked her to sleep, took out the trash without being asked, repaired the loose railing on the porch, spent time with May helping with groceries and dishes. He wasn't perfect, but he was present. Elara's freelancing picked up quickly. By the end of the month, she had 2 steady clients and was bringing in a few $100s a week, enough to cover essentials. More importantly, it made her feel alive again. Not as a wife, not as a mother, but as a woman with worth outside of her roles. One afternoon, Elara met with her therapist for the first time in nearly a year. Dr. Adler had a soft voice and sharp eyes. She listened without judgment, nodded with understanding. "I don't know if I still love him," Elara confessed. "You don't have to," Dr. Adler replied. "You just have to love yourself enough to choose what's right for you." Elara nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. "I don't want to raise a daughter who thinks love means losing yourself." "Then don't," the therapist said. "Raise her to watch you heal. That's love, too." That night, Elara watched Micah dance with Ori in the living room. The music was soft jazz from the Bluetooth speaker, and he was doing that ridiculous dad sway all new fathers do. Ori giggled in his arms, grabbing at his nose. Micah smiled, eyes crinkling, not at Elara, but at their daughter. And for the first time, Elara didn't feel hollow watching him. She felt still, like maybe, just maybe, something had survived the wreckage. One evening, Micah asked if they could talk. Elara poured 2 glasses of wine, one for her, one for him, and they sat on the porch swing as the sun disappeared behind the magnolia trees. "I want to move back in," he said. Elara took a sip of wine.
Why?
"Because I want to rebuild this family. Not just for Ori. For us." She looked at him for a long moment. "I'm not the same woman I was," she said. "And I won't be her again." Micah nodded. "I don't want her. I want you, as you are." She studied him, his posture, his eyes, his voice. Then she said, "Let's take it 1 week at a time." They didn't sleep in the same bed right away. Micah took the guest room.
He cooked, cleaned,
attended baby checkups, stayed up through night feedings on weekends to give Elara some rest. There were no grand gestures, just small ones. He relearned how to be part of her life, not just a visitor in it. One night, weeks later, after putting Ori to sleep, Elara came into the guest room where Micah was reading. She stood silently for a moment before saying, "Come sleep beside me." Micah looked up, stunned. "Are you sure? I'm not promising everything's fixed, but I'm saying I'm willing to try." Micah closed his book, rose from the bed, and followed her. They lay in silence at first. Then Elara whispered, "I still don't forgive you." "I know," he said, "but I'm healing." He reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. The first night Micah returned to Elara's bed, he didn't sleep. He lay awake, listening to Ori's soft baby breaths through the monitor, feeling the weight of forgiveness that hadn't quite arrived, but was no longer out of reach. Elara slept facing away from him, her spine curled slightly, her breath steady. Micah didn't reach for her. Not yet. That privilege had to be earned. So he just watched her shoulders rise and fall, and made a silent vow he didn't dare break this time. Fatherhood didn't come naturally to Micah. Not the way it did to Elara. She moved with calm confidence, diapering, feeding, soothing. Even in exhaustion, she had a rhythm to her care that Micah found mystifying. He stumbled through it all. Bottles fumbled. Onesies snapped wrong. The stroller turned into a Rubik's Cube every time he touched it. But Micah kept trying. Every night, he read 3 pages from Goodnight Moon and made up voices for the quiet old lady whispering hush. He learned to swaddle, even if it took 10 tries. He held Ori against his chest while pacing the hallway at 2 a.m. just to let Elara sleep an extra hour. No one praised him. No one clapped. And that, he realized, was the point. This wasn't a performance. This was penance. One afternoon, Elara watched through the nursery door as Micah hummed a lullaby to Ori. She didn't interrupt. He didn't know she was watching. That was new. Before, Micah often did things to be seen. to be applauded. Now he did them even when no one was looking. And that, more than anything, began to shift something in her. 3 weeks after he moved back in, Micah cooked dinner and cleaned the entire kitchen afterward without being asked. He even packed up the leftovers. Elara stood at the doorway, arms crossed. "Who are you? And what have you done with my husband?" Micah smiled sheepishly.
He's gone.
"Thought I'd try being a man instead." She laughed, for real this time. Not because it was clever, but because it was honest. On a rainy Sunday, Micah surprised Elara by suggesting they visit the Oakwood Family Center, a small local nonprofit that offered new parent workshops and community baby play sessions. She raised an eyebrow. "You want to go to a parenting class?" "I want to go where you and Ori go," he said simply. "I want to learn the things I should have cared about a long time ago." So they went. Micah sat in a circle with 5 other dads, all bouncing their babies and exchanging tips about teething and sleep regressions. He asked questions, took notes, laughed awkwardly, got baby spit on his jeans. He didn't flinch once. Elara watched from across the room, feeding Ori a bottle, and felt a flicker of something unexpected. Admiration. That night, while folding laundry together, she said, "You're doing better." Micah looked over. "Really?" "Yeah," she nodded. "You're showing up." He swallowed. "I know I don't deserve another chance. But I'm going to keep trying until I become the kind of father she can be proud of. And the kind of man I can respect again," she added. He nodded. "That too." One evening, Elara sat on the back porch with a journal in her lap. She was scribbling in silence as the sun dipped low behind the treetops. Micah stepped outside, holding 2 mugs of tea. He placed one beside her and didn't speak. After a while, she said, "Do you remember when we planted that cherry tree?" Micah nodded. "Right after our first anniversary. You wanted something that would grow with us." He chuckled dryly. "Guess it's taller than we are now." Elara traced the edge of her journal with a fingertip. "I think about that a lot. How trees grow crooked sometimes. But they still grow." He looked at her profile. "Do you think we're still growing?" She turned to meet his gaze. "We'll see." The next day, Ori rolled over for the first time. Micah was the one watching. He gasped, scooped her up, and ran into the kitchen. "She did it." She rolled. Elara, chopping carrots, smiled. "Told you she was stronger than she looks."
She's a fighter, he said, grinning.
Just like her mom. Later that week, Micah went to Elara with a folder in hand. "I want to show you something." She opened it. Inside was a revised custody agreement, a draft for full shared parenting rights, but only if she wanted that. No pressure.
No manipulation.
Just fairness. "Whatever you choose." He said, "I'll honor it." Elara closed the folder slowly. "I appreciate this." Micah nodded. "I know it doesn't erase the past, but it's a start." She didn't promise anything that day. But that night, she let him hold her hand again. They took Ori to the lake the next weekend. Micah carried the picnic basket. Elara held the baby. They spread out a blanket under the shade of an old birch tree, and for a while, it felt like nothing had ever broken. Like they were just a new family finding their rhythm in the world. Micah watched as Elara dipped Ori's tiny toes into the water. And in that moment, he didn't see the woman he'd betrayed. He saw the woman who kept standing anyway. The woman who gave birth alone and loved anyway. And he thought, "I want to spend the rest of my life becoming someone worthy of her forgiveness." That night, after Elara laid Ori in the crib, she turned to Micah. "Do you love me?" she asked. He nodded. "More than I ever knew I could." "Why?" "Because you held this family together when I tried to tear it apart. Because you love with strength, not desperation. Because you became more beautiful to me when you stopped needing me." She looked at him carefully and whispered, "Good.
Keep proving it."
6 months had passed since Ori was born. The seasons had changed, almost without notice. Spring, once soaked in storm clouds and silences, had finally softened into summer. The cherry tree in the yard was taller now, dotted with new leaves and pale pink blossoms. Micah had pruned it himself one weekend, sweat dripping from his brow, Elara watching quietly from the porch. Ori bundled in her arms. It was one of those moments where no one spoke, but something shifted all the same. Elara had returned to work part-time from home. Her client list had doubled. She took calls while bouncing Ori on her hip, typed invoices during nap time, and somehow found the balance that had once felt impossible. Micah, too, had changed. He now worked fewer hours, trading late-night meetings for bedtime lullabies. He volunteered for diaper duty without prompting, knew the names of every plush animal in Ori's crib, and could now swaddle with Olympic-level precision. More than anything, he had learned to sit with discomfort, to face hard conversations, even when the words hurt. One warm evening, the three of them took a walk through the neighborhood just before dusk. Ori sat in the stroller, babbling to a stuffed giraffe, while the sky above them blushed lavender and gold. They passed the little park at the end of the street. Micah said softly, "Do you remember when we used to come here on weekends? Before everything." She nodded. "You brought me that iced coffee I hated." He grinned. "But you drank it anyway." I was trying to be polite. They both laughed, soft, real, a sound they hadn't shared in a long time. Then silence. But not the tense kind. The kind that comes from people who know each other's breaths, not just their words. Later that night, as Elara rocked Ori to sleep, she thought about how quiet healing really is. It's not fireworks. It's not grand gestures. It's the subtle things. The mug of tea waiting on the counter. The way Micah no longer flinched when asked hard questions. The way he now looked her in the eyes when he said, "I'll be home on time." She laid Ori in the crib and whispered, "We made it, baby girl." A few days later, they hosted dinner at home. Just close friends, Elara's mom and Micah's parents. It wasn't perfect. There were still small tensions, lingering edges to soften. But the food was good, the house was full, and when May took Ori into her arms and called her the calm after the storm, no one corrected her. After dessert, Micah brought out an old photo album. He flipped to a picture from their first year of marriage, Elara in a sundress, him in a wrinkled button-down, both laughing into the lens. "We were kids," he said. "We were hopeful," Elara corrected. And hopeful isn't a bad place to start. That night, after everyone left and the house fell into a gentle quiet, Micah poured 2 glasses of wine and met Elara on the back steps. They sat shoulder to shoulder, not quite touching. "You know," he said, "I still don't know how I managed to break something so beautiful." Elara sipped her wine. "Because you didn't know how to hold it yet." Micah turned to her. "And now?" She looked at him, not with pity, not with pain, but with a kind of clarity earned only through surviving heartbreak. "Now you hold it gently, and that's enough." He swallowed the lump in his throat. "Do you think we'll make it?" Elara didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at the sky, at the stars slowly waking. "I think we're already making it." The next morning, Elara found a note on the kitchen table. "Took Ori to the lake. Breakfast in the oven. You sleep in. Love you. M." It was the first time he'd written "love you" in months. And it was the first time Elara didn't doubt whether he meant it. By the lake, Micah held Ori up in the morning sun. Her eyes squinted, her giggles soft and sleepy. He whispered to her, "I wasn't ready before. But I'm learning. Every day. Because of you. Because of your mom. Because I want to be better than who I was." Ori, of course, didn't understand. But maybe she felt it, this quiet promise between father and daughter. The vow he hadn't kept before. And the one he wouldn't break again. Back at home, Elara stood at the window, coffee in hand, watching the wind tease the leaves on the cherry tree. For the first time in a long time, the silence in the house wasn't empty. It was peaceful. She stepped outside, barefoot on the porch, breathing in the morning. When Micah and Ori returned, she met them at the door. "Morning,"
she said.
"Morning," Micah smiled, kissing her forehead. "Your girl loves the lake." "Our girl," she corrected gently. He looked at her, grateful, grounded. And she smiled back. The kind of smile that meant, We're not perfect, but we're real, and we're trying. That night, as they lay in bed with Ori between them, tiny fists curled against her chest. Breath soft as moonlight, Elara whispered, "She'll never know how close we came to breaking." Micah replied, "She'll only know that we held on." Elara nodded, tears warm on her cheeks. "Then that's enough." Outside, the last breeze of summer rustled the cherry tree. And inside, 3 hearts beat in quiet rhythm. Still healing, still learning, but together. And that brings us to the end of today's story on Truistory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.